Welcome, everyone, to episode 79 of the RDH Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chad. Joined alongside me is my brother, Tanner. It is a gray day if you're watching on YouTube. You know what I mean? Both got gray shirts on, both got white hats on. Tanner, how's it hanging, dude?
We are brothers. We do come from the same mother, so it is kind of assumed that a part of our style is kind of similar. I do steal your shirts. I wore I stole one of your shirts the other day. Well, I didn't steal it the other day, but I had it and I wore it from a time that I did steal it previously.
I've lived in another state for 3 years. You definitely stole it.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's got there's some holes in it, so I'm sorry, but that was a comfy shirt, and I took it just right from you. You left it, and that's prime for the taking. I can't be responsible for things that you leave behind. Because I'm not shipping it. I'm not a mailman. We've been over this, so
that's a fair point. Yeah, you and the family don't know really how to go to a store or like a UPS or FedEx and literally just give them a box. Like it is fascinating how much the family refuses to do it. Hey, if it makes you feel any better, the only reason I know how to do it is because I had to do it for work back in the day. Anyway, sports talk this time. Super Bowl preview. We got a lot of NFL trade rumors, people wanting that everywhere, and it's going to be a fun one to talk about. It's getting to the off season, so we're bringing back the basketball segment for all the listeners. Tanner's Goal 3. If you know what that reference is from, it's from Family Guy. Okay, if you don't, come on. Four Nations Faceoff. We got a ton of hockey. I got the Team USA jersey back up over here, and we're going to talk a lot of hockey today. We're going to go over the format. We're going to go over the schedules. We're going to go over the rosters. We're going to go over the predictions. And then lastly, we're going to end with the NCAA prospect profile on the football side, Luther Burden III. Okay, Super Bowl preview. Let's just get in and just kick this thing off. I'm not going to start with prediction per se, but what do the Eagles need to do this time to win this thing? Right? Like, what do you think they need to do? Because last time Mahomes went in there, clearly hobbled, one of the best hurt games I've ever seen in my entire life, and still beat the Eagles. But this is a different Eagles team. What do you think they need to do to win this game against the Chiefs?
It's honestly a good question, because you look at kind of that game previously that they had in the Super Bowl 2 years back, and I thought Philly got off to a really, really good start in that game. I thought that they were moving the ball extraordinarily well, really. It just came down to those late game situations, chances where you could have taken them out. You could have put the cherry on top. You could have gone down and scored an extra touchdown to kind of give you that extra cushion, and they just kind of didn't execute towards the end of the game. And I think that's just the Chiefs' bread and butter. They're very good at that. They're very good at putting you into kind of tough positions in the toughest part of the game. That defense has just kind of been able to do that over their dynastic run the past couple years. So honestly, I just want to see them get off to that hot start again. They got Saquon. Let him cook. You know what I mean? That's if you can get Saquon going and you can get him over 100 yards quickly, I think that this game is going to, pay dividends in the long run of that game because, the Chiefs are going to be so confused as where they were not confused in, that previous matchup, right? I'm not saying they were a one-sided attack last time they were in this matchup, but they didn't have Saquon Barkley. That much is true. So I think you utilize the guys that you went out and you paid, the guys that you went out and got to kind of, change the outcome of this Super Bowl because, that's the major difference. And I think Saquon has been the lead contributor to their success throughout this entire postseason. And the fact if you don't lean on him in the Super Bowl, then that's just not a good decision. So I would love to see 25 to 30 touches from him just at a minimum, regardless of how it's going, because Saquon is just that kind of guy. He can break any type of run at any type of moment. You just give him a chance and he'll go. So I love what the Chiefs are doing defensively, but if Saquon gets going, this game is going to be tough for the Chiefs. Because, you saw that game against Buffalo, with the Chiefs last weekend, I think it was, and or the previous one, and you kind of saw Buffalo doing that. They were riding James Cook a lot. Josh Allen wasn't having as much success through the air as he usually did throughout the regular season. So it kind of was their bread and butter to a point. We talked about it. There was a drive where they threw one pass and it was a screen pass on a touchdown drive. It was like a 7 to 8, 9 play drive, and they got all the way down, scored a touchdown. So if you can do that against, or it's been shown that you can do that against the Chiefs, and if you can do it consistently throughout a game, I'm not saying run the ball every single time. Obviously, throw passes in there, get creative. It's the Super Bowl. Unload your entire playbook. But I would love to see a run-centric Eagles offense, and I've been asking for this for the last like 2-3 years, just in general with the Eagles, because I just their offensive line. I think they can win that battle in the trenches. I really do. Like, there's not a whole lot of offensive lines that can go up against the Chiefs, but this one might be able to take them out. In terms of in the trenches and when the Eagles are on offense. So I would love to see them running the ball, utilizing Saquon, making sure they get their guys going, the guys that they know are a part of their offense. Don't get cute. You know what I mean? Don't get cute unless it's a cute little cool play that you haven't seen before. Like Nick Foles with the Philly special. So like if it comes down to that, absolutely pull out your entire playbook, but don't get, you know what I mean? Just don't get in your own heads with these guys. I think you keep it simple.
Yeah, and I mean, to hit on a couple of points you said, like I think it's pretty obvious, right? Like if Saquon has 30 touches this game, that's probably a very good sign for the Eagles, right? Like you have to put the ball in your best player's hands, and that's the best player on the Eagles. Like it's just that simple. But for me, it's the same thing. What's the X factor? What's the X factor on the Eagles side? Saquon, right? It's Saquon. If AJ Brown gets out and goes out and has an absolute day, then that's awesome. You know what I mean? It's same with Devontae Smith. Like it could absolutely happen, but if you're not making Jalen Hurts throw the ball, then that means the Eagles are winning in terms of their play because they're just continuing to feed the ball to Saquon. Now, the biggest thing is what does that knee look like? Because you see him kind of laboring that knee, especially toward the last, not last week, but the prior week. You kind of saw him laboring that knee a little bit, and he didn't really play a ton toward the end of the game. But I think that was more kind of just precautionary to make sure he's okay for the Super Bowl. So I think if Saquon gets, over 100 yards, it's going to be real hard to compete with this Eagles team. But it's Mahomes on the other side of the ball, right? Like it's Patrick Mahomes on the other side of the ball. The other year, I mean, this game right now it's favored at 1.5, and it hasn't changed at all. When they played years ago, I think it was like a 7-point spread or very close to a 7-point spread, right? Probably like 6.5 or 7.5. It was probably 6.5. But that was a big spread, and the Chiefs went out and beat them, and Mahomes was hurt, right? So it's like now Mahomes isn't hurt. You still got a couple years, and you're going for the three-peat. There's just a lot of stuff that's really right. That's going really right for Kansas City this year. Obviously, a lot of people think the refs are a big part of it. Yeah, definitely there are some calls there. But being a Cowboy fan, there was when the Cowboys were winning, it was always the refs too, right? When the Patriots were winning, it was always the refs as well. Sometimes, except for when the Patriots decided to deflate the balls, we all know about that. But my thing with the Eagles is that if you get Saquon the ball, first and second down, you just feed the ball to Saquon. You know what I mean? Inside run, outside run, feed the ball to Saquon. You just have to run away. Yeah, every now and then. You have to run away from Chris Jones. That's the formula right now. Kansas City has some great guys on the defensive side of the ball, but the only shutdown guy, in my opinion, they have is Chris Jones. Now, an inside run, that means you're probably running against Chris Jones. So you're going to have to pick the right side, right? You're going to have to pick the right side where to go. So outside runs is what I'm going to be thinking about a lot. Pitches as well on Philly's side. Options with Jalen Hurts, especially after the couple weeks rest. Quick, get the ball out of your hands to AJ Brown or to Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is the best number 2 in the game, one of the best number 2s in the game, in my opinion. And if you get the ball out quick to him, that's great, right? So that's kind of what the Eagles need to do to win this thing. Now, on the other side of the coin, and the Eagles' X factor with Saquon Barkley, on the other side of the coin, the Chiefs. What do the Chiefs have to do to win? Who does their X factor need to be? Who do you got? Obviously, the X factor is Mahomes. Like that's not even a question, right? And what do they need to do to win? Because in the regular season they were good enough, right? In the playoffs they haven't been good enough. They've been pretty damn good, and we said it weeks ago before the playoffs even started. They raised their level of play. This is a team that raises their level of play whenever they go on in playoffs. And it's crazy because every week in the playoffs, they get better. So it's a Super Bowl. They're here. They know they're going to be playing in February. So they're not even worried about it. But for me, what do you think the Chiefs have to do to win this game against the Eagles?
I think that they got to, similarly, like get Kareem Hunt going, get Isaiah Pacheco going, get that dual threat running game working. But I loved what I saw in the AFC Championship game with Mahomes. Kind of like you said with Jalen Hurts with those option plays and those keepers. I want to see Mahomes get involved in the run game. Like I want to see him continually getting, 3, 4, 5, 6 yards on these scrambles out of nothing. You know what I mean? Because those are the type of plays that keep their drives alive. And those have been kind of like a little bit of unsung heroes. I mean, we saw him rush for a touchdown too in that last game as well. So I want to see him do that. I want to see him use his legs. I know he will. He always does in Super Bowls. He always makes the best play in the best play in the best moment and the biggest moment. So I'm not afraid that he, won't do that. But also I want to see one of the receivers step up. We're gonna have to see a big game, not a huge game from one of these receivers, but a moment or two from one of these or two of these guys to go up, catch a touchdown, catch a big play, because a big play or two is probably going to decide this game. Let's be honest. They're two really good teams and really good offenses, so along with defenses too. So I just want to see who's going to step up. D-Hop, like you were saying, Xavier Worthy, Marquise Brown, like these guys. I want to see one of them play up, to their strengths. I mean, we saw it happen in that Buffalo Bills game. Again, that huge catch to put them it was like 5 yards away from the goal line. That was like, I think it might have been double coverage. So it was a huge play, and that was a massive play, massive, momentum swing in the game. So just continue to do Chiefs football, make the Eagles defense guess, because that's probably the best defense in the NFL, I would say. Just on paper, you look at it and how they're playing right now, they're just flying around the field too. And I also want to say that, a lot of these playoffs, you look at Philly and you look at kind of the way they've been winning, and it's a lot of teams spotting them points, and that's not, not a credit to their defense. Their defenses are playing lights out. So if you can not obviously spot them points, not turn the ball over in situations that are kind of like 50-50 balls and stuff like that, I think that you're going to put yourself in a great position to win this game, because I think it's going to come down to, can Philly execute, which has been the story throughout these playoffs. It's been, can Philly go down there and execute? And a lot of the times the answer is yes, because they have Saquon Barkley. So they've been in situations where they've been able to lose games, but, that defense has kept them in it, has given them a couple turnovers, things like that, to kind of make the blows a little bit softer when they get the ball back, if that makes sense. So I have no fear. I don't think Mahomes is going to turn over the ball a bunch. I don't think we're going to go out there and see him throw 3 picks. You know what I mean? So it's not a super big worry. And all these worries are kind of just like, they shouldn't do this. They should not do that. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we've seen him in 2 Super Bowls already not do that. So I have faith that at least one of those things will probably not happen. So I think they just need to stick to their game plan, play Chiefs football, get the receivers involved. Obviously, Travis Kelce is going to be a major part of the game. You want to get him involved. If you can't, then you're going to go to one of your receivers who, if they can make, if they can beat one of those Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean or Darius Slay, back there in Philly's secondary, that's going to give you so many more opportunities, so many more, and just give Mahomes just in general so many more opportunities. So I like it. It's going to be tough going up against that Philly defensive line. They're playing lights out this year, and I'm curious to see how that Chiefs O-line is going to be able to keep up. I don't know if like I said, I don't know if running the ball is going to be, quote unquote, the answer, because it's stout. You know what I mean? It's going to be tough for Pacheco and Kareem Hunt to get going against those big boys from Philly. So they're just going to have to get creative, kind of run the ball in different ways, which is kind of what I was saying with those option plays, with those keeper plays, kind of maybe some screens rolled in there too, and just that quick passing game as well. So I think we're going to see a lot of quick passing from both teams, a lot of kind of outside runs from both teams, a lot of creative running schemes from both teams. So I don't think it's just going to be ground and pound like we've kind of seen throughout these playoffs. I think we're going to see not some high flying game, but something, where you're like, oh, that was a cool play. You know what I mean? Oh, that was cool. Oh, I like how they got on the ball in that situation. You know what I mean? It's like, it's stuff like that. So I think both these coordinators are going to be in their bag. We know Kellen Moore has quite a deep bag. How deep is it? Not too sure. And we know, Andy Reid's is unlimited in terms of the deepness. So, but with that long-winded rant, Chiefs have a lot of ways I think they can win this game. But it's going to come down to executing for, I think, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Chiefs just need to kind of play their game. And if they play their game, I think they'll be okay.
I think that, you have a big opportunity in terms of the, when you say the battle between the defensive line on the Philly side and the offensive line on the Chiefs side. I mean, the thing that most quarterbacks, when the pocket is collapsing, that's kind of when they, when they go down. That's when Mahomes gets dangerous.
Exactly.
Because he gets outside of the pocket and he holds onto the ball. The longer Mahomes holds onto the ball, the more fucked you are on the defensive side. Mm-hmm. Like you're screwed. So, in my opinion, for the Chiefs, you got to hold on to the ball as long as you possibly can, because you got Xavier Worthy on that side. You've got Travis Kelce, who is the most veteran of veteran tight ends, that knows, it's about 4 seconds, and Mahomes is starting to roll out to the right a little bit. Even though he's looking not at me, there's a possibility that this ball could absolutely come to me, right? And those no-look passes and everything. So, for me, with the Chiefs to win this game, they have to continue to play their game. I think that they lean on Mahomes. I think it's very simple. You lean on the guy that got you there, and you lean on the guy that's won 2 Super Bowls in the past 3 years, right? Like or 2 Super Bowls, right? And in the past 3 years, it could be 3. You lean on that guy. And also, you lean on the other piece of that with Travis Kelce. He's been there for all the Super Bowls too. Travis Kelce typically has a pretty big game when it comes to the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl game. Well, last week, pretty decent game, right? Kelce had a pretty decent game. So the key for the Chiefs for me is Mahomes. You need to keep pressure out of his face, but there's a certain amount of that pressure that he thrives on. Now, I'm not saying that Philadelphia's defensive tackles run right up the middle off a screen and you don't block them every time, right? But I'm saying that this is a guy that thrives in chaos. And this is also a guy that you have to remember. These are rookie corners for Philadelphia. This is Cooper DeJean out of Iowa and Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, if I'm not mistaken. First round cornerbacks, right? Cooper DeJean didn't get taken in the first, got taken in at the beginning of the second, if I'm not mistaken, or end of the first. I don't remember. Anyway, these are guys that are rookies. I get they played well. I get that both of them are up for defensive rookie of the year. I understand that. But this is Mahomes. And this is a guy that is going to look your way the whole time. And you're a corner thinking, oh, this is mine. And then it's 30 yards down the field on a rope to Travis Kelce when he wasn't even looking at him, like I was saying. So Mahomes has so many things in his bag. And this team is, every team is fighting to beat Kansas City at this point. Every single team in the NFL is sitting there in the last couple of years going, okay, what do we need to do to beat Kansas City in the playoffs? The Eagles addressed it on the defensive side of the ball, and they addressed it on the offensive side of the ball as well. Now, will it be enough? That's why we wait and see. So that's kind of the keys for me on the Kansas City side. It's going to be a fun Super Bowl. I think it's going to be a close Super Bowl. I think that this is definitely a lot closer of a game than the last Super Bowl matchup, just because of Saquon. Saquon brings something to this game that not a lot of people have seen, right? In terms of production at the highest level, in terms of running backs, right? Going on these last couple of years, it's been the battle of the quarterbacks. But all right, that is enough Super Bowl chat. We've got some trade.
Are we gonna pick the Super Bowl?
Did we do that?
Did we do that last week?
We didn't pick. We didn't do the score prediction. That's my bad. I gotta get us back on the rails. Who do you pick? Because I already know who I'm going. I'm not picking against him.
Obviously, I'm going Chiefs. I want the three-peat to happen. It's never happened before. Also, I'm a little biased, with the Cowboys. So it's pretty easy for me to pick here, but I think we're going to get a little bit lower scoring of a game than we're used to, just because at times we've seen these offenses be high flying this year, but at other times we've seen them been, towards the bottom of the barrel, where it's like, what is going? Like, what are we doing? You know what I mean? So I don't know if it's going to be, necessarily through turnovers, but I think this is going to be kind of like a, maybe absolute max, like 50, 52, 53 points between both teams. So I'm liking, let's say 28. No, we'll 31 to, and then what did I say? 20, we'll say 24. How about that? Total 55. Keeps it within a score. There we go. 31 to 24. Chiefs. And
it's not a bad one.
No overtime. I don't think overtime.
No overtime Chiefs in reg. Yeah, if Mahomes gets the ball, it's the end. It's over, right? Mm-hmm. It's if he gets the ball at the end of the game, doesn't matter how long he's got. It's pretty much over. I want to pick against the Chiefs. No, I don't. I'm going Chiefs as well. But like I said, the Eagles have a great opportunity to do it. And if the Eagles defense does capitalize on some mistakes and some turnovers and some defensive plays, then I think that's a way that they could potentially beat this Kansas City team. But it's if Kansas City hurts themselves, because I mean the teams that Kansas City has played and beaten, right? Like Kansas City, it hasn't been necessarily like a shootout in all of these games. So it's going to be interesting, but I'm never going to bet against Mahomes in the playoffs. I've done it once, and I'll never do it again. It's like Tom. All right, now jump into the NFL or trade rumors. Yeah, okay. Cooper Kupp coming out saying he's going there. They are going to trade Cooper Kupp in the offseason. Interesting. That's interesting. He was hurt a lot last year, but when he was in, he played pretty damn well. Played like the Cooper Kupp that I kind of see of old. But I understand with the contract. I also understand that you never really thought that you would get a Puka Nacua, later on in the draft, and him turn into not even a number one, like a top 10 wide receiver in the league. So I understand that. But were you pretty shocked about that news about Cooper Kupp going?
Yeah, I'm very shocked. I mean, he's been a part of that Rams organization pretty much ever since McVay has been there. I want to say he was one of his first draft picks, and he's been a ride or die with McVay. So it's genuinely surprising to see this, especially after we kind of heard these talks in the middle of the season when the Rams were kind of sellers at the trade deadline earlier this year. And then, they had that slew of wins that kind of put them in the playoffs that put those talks to rest. So kind of interesting here, especially from a former Triple Crown winner with Cooper Kupp. We know he's very, very talented, but definitely at the point in his career where he's playing second fiddle to Puka Nacua. I don't think anyone can argue that. Puka's just been fantastic, and he was fantastic this year when he was playing. Even with all those injuries, he still had a great year. So I think they're riding Puka. We know that he's going to be a star for years to come. And I like their second, Robinson. I think he's pretty good. Obviously, it shows that Stafford's not done because they're investing a little bit in those younger receivers. So I don't hate the move. You're probably the best years of Puka or of Cooper Kupp are behind him. I would say I don't think he's going to go out there and win another Triple Crown. That's just he had an amazing season. Like it's hard to replicate that. But he's still fantastic, and I think he's still going to be at least a number two, like at the very minimum on a whole lot of other teams wherever he decides to go, if they let him, kind of choose and pick his preferred destination. So it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with him. But man, I mean, he's so talented. He's gonna improve any team he gets on. Just the ability, just the route running, just in general, and just the finesse that guy has is gonna bring a lot of talent to a lot of If you're a wide receiver needy team, I would go and get this boy. He's a veteran. So he's going to locker room presence, everything. It's going to be awesome.
The literal one of the best route runners in the entire league, and it's not even close. Deshaun, and then news coming out of Cleveland, Deshaun Watson wants to be. Well, let me tell you, Deshaun, they want you gone as well. So that one's not going to be too tough. Unfortunately, Cleveland was literally a quarterback away, right? Like that when those years when they made the play. And let me rephrase this. I didn't necessarily think they were a quarterback away. I think they needed a couple more pieces when they had Baker and they made the playoff. But hey, you can argue that they were a quarterback and a couple pieces away. Well, they trade away, their quarterback with Baker Mayfield or just let him go, and then signed Deshaun Watson, who at the time was Dabo Swinney, the Michael Jordan of college football, right? He had been in the league playing for the Texans for a while, and he was a very good quarterback. But then everything happened, and he just has not been able to play at all. I don't know if Deshaun's number one anymore, just based off of what I saw in Cleveland. Now, given this day and age, you have to give these guys so many more chances, it feels like, because who the hell would have known that Sam Darnold would have done what he did, right? Who knows if Deshaun Watson goes somewhere next year? He could have a good year. Am I going to bet on that? No. Am I going to sign him? No, not even a little bit. But back, hey, back in the day, He was not too shabby as a quarterback. And then this one's kind of surprising because this was a guy that I kind of thought of as like the offensive tackle that they used to have, Joe Thomas, like a guy that was just always going to be in Cleveland, just never going to leave there. But Myles Garrett coming out and saying that he wants to leave Cleveland and he wants to go somewhere where he can compete for a Super Bowl. And he said your legacy is defined by wins, and I can't disagree with anything he said. But Myles Garrett on the open market, I mean, that is I don't even know what's going to happen there, right? So obviously he said he wants to go to teams that are Super Bowl bound and everything. So you look at these playoff teams that have made it, you look at the teams that were right on the cusp of it. Unfortunately, one team comes to mind to me right off the bat. And it's a team that's not afraid to get any of these guys. Like it could, to me, this is a guy that could easily just go to like the Rams, Philly. Just random, like these random really good teams. I don't know if you're going to have enough money like with the Chiefs to sign like a Myles Garrett, but if you have Myles Garrett and Chris Jones on the same line, that is unheard of. Buffalo went out and already paid Von Miller, right? They already did that, but who knows? Maybe they go do something. He wants to go somewhere to win, but Myles Garrett out of Cleveland, you're a Cleveland guy. And, hey, that was your kind of last lifeline there. So you're floating in the water with not a lifeline now as a Cleveland.
Yeah, no floaties. No floaties. You're kind of raw dogging it over there in the water. Maybe a little, unless you don't know how to swim. But
taking on water.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, I'll hit that first with Myles. Like it's, that one hits a little close to home because he did go to A&M. Watched him play before I went there. And he was drafted to a team that I enjoy watching, the Cleveland Browns. And it's like, okay, this is perfect. You know what I mean? Like I have his jersey. I've worn it on this podcast. So it's very bittersweet if he does go. So I would love to go and see a championship, go and see him win a championship. Kind of like when DeMarcus Ware left the Cowboys and he went and won a championship with the Broncos. I would love to see that happen, and he's always going to be a Cowboy at heart, so I hope Myles kind of keeps that same sentiment. There's been a lot of more stuff coming out kind of today too about kind of his decision making in that process. He talked to, LeBron James, Cleveland native guy that loves Cleveland at the bottom of his heart, brought him a championship. He went back to do that. So his greatness prevailed in Cleveland, and he had conversations with Myles and kind of that's the conclusion that they both had reached. And, when you have two guys that just scream the aura of Cleveland being like, there's nothing here, it's not a good look, one, and two, how do you say no? You know what I mean? How are you going to fight that and be like he's right. He is. You look at the situation.
On the football side, 1,000%. I mean, that's the fourth place team in that division next year. Easily. I don't think you're going to get any arguments from anybody in the league on that, except for someone that maybe works for the Browns.
And probably a top 5 pick again, if you look at it like that. They don't have a quarterback on this roster. They've tried to get a couple guys. Maybe Kirk Cousins comes in there and, I don't know, does something to give him not a top 5 pick, or a draft pick, that you never see coming. But I, at least on paper right now and what it looks like in terms of their draft, it probably going to be a bottom 5 team in the NFL again, not competing for Super Bowl for probably the next couple years at least. And that's if your rebuild goes well. You know what I mean? And that's just saying that teams can rebuild in 2 to 3 years. We've seen the Texans do it.
Washington.
And we've seen Washington do it. So it is possible. Will it happen? The curse of Cleveland says no. So I don't think it will, but you look at the situation and you're like, I think both sides are so right. They're both correct. And like, okay, I want Myles to stay. I want him to continue to play well as he's played in Cleveland. He's been the only consistent positive side on that defense just throughout his entire tenure here. And, you look at Andrew Berry, the GM, and he's not going to let him leave is what he's kind of said. He's like, no, you're not leaving Cleveland. You know what I mean? And I don't know, how those discussions happen. I think it's just, he's not satisfied, and he wants to go and win the big games. He wants to play on the biggest stages. That's what he went to the SEC for, to play at A&M. That's what he went to the NFL for, to play, on the biggest stages, to win Super Bowls. He was the number 1 overall pick. He was supposed to change a franchise. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where how do you contain his satisfaction? You know what I mean? How do you get that satisfaction back? for that player. If you're Andrew Barry, if you're that GM, heck, if you're even the owners, you know what I mean. So hopefully it's going to be a lot more Miles centric in the future. Maybe they let him go in and have a say in GM operations, things like that, have a bigger role. I don't know, but I would love to see him stay in Cleveland. A lot of these things are kind of, you say one thing and then a lot of things happen. So until he gets traded, or until he leaves, I'm gonna assume that he's gonna be a Cleveland Brown, because Miles is, in my opinion, he's not the type of person that's gonna hold out for a long time, like a Le'Veon Bell. You know what I mean? That's just gonna kind of sit there and be like, I'm not playing for you. Period. And Miles is not that type of guy. I don't think he's gonna be like that. Just from the interviews, from the things that I've followed him his whole career, his whole demeanor. So he doesn't strike me as that type of guy. He could do it. Don't get me wrong, but until he's out of Cleveland, I'm still going to assume that he's a Brown. But we'll see what happens. If he does go, I would love for him to go to Detroit. I think that would be a really cool destination, or Buffalo. I think they need a big pass rusher as well, like you were saying. I think they got a lot of open cap room still, with a lot of those young receivers, and a whole lot of not expensive draft picks over there. And especially since they let a lot of guys go this past year, and it's very clear that they need help on the defensive side of the ball. So I would love him to go to over there, preferably. If he does go, even if he does go to the Bills, it'd be cool. I would love him to go into an NFC team. You know what I mean? To get him out of the AFC, so you don't really have to see him that often. If he goes to an AFC North team, I might puke. Period. And it's just one of those things. So I would love to see him stay. I don't know if he will. More information needs to come out for kind of us to be clear on the whole situation. But man, I saw that report right after like all those trades went down in the NBA. I was riding high, man. I was like, oh, dude, this is awesome. Like, getting a bunch of players left and right. Everything's going well. And then that thing hit like a bag of bricks, you know what I mean? And I'm like, oh, that's Cleveland. Like, that's the whole team. So it's one of those things. Cleveland's in a rebuild. They've been in a rebuild for the last like 20 years. And they haven't even been close. The closest was Baker, and that's the biggest stage Miles was on, but they need a lot of help to get back to that stage, and you're kind of wasting Miles' career at this point. So that's a long-winded answer, but I'll let you say your thoughts on it. But I do want to talk about the Deshaun Watson thing too after you're done.
No, I mean you pretty much nailed everything that I was going to say about it, and I think that if you want to go for a legacy and you want to go for a win, and you talk to Braun, and you get the okay from the king to leave the city, and it's a bit different, right? Like, we've only seen one Super Bowl really determined in my lifetime by a literal defensive end, and that was Von Miller in that Denver Broncos Super Bowl where DeMarcus Ware was with him.
Seem to. Aaron Donald against the Bengals.
Fair. Aaron Donald's a good call. Forgot about that one. Yeah, he did. That was a literal Super Bowl from him. Yeah, that's a good call. That's cool. That's two of them, right? But they were on teams that were like winning, right? Cleveland's not winning, especially not in that division. But keep going with your thoughts on Deshaun.
With Deshaun, it's this is a weird one, and kind of a weird good thing, but weird bad thing, whichever way you want to look at it.
It destroyed Cleveland, dude. Destroyed them. That trade destroyed.
I'm not saying it's a good trade. That is not. That's not. It's not the narrative here.
No. I'm saying it's good he's finally going, but unfortunately, that trade that happened in Cleveland, it kind of destroyed him. Kind of like Washington with RG3. Took him a while to get back.
Hold on. When it puts it into perspective, it's going to get a whole lot worse. Because when you look at it, the Deshaun Watson trade, and I saw this on social media, it was one of the Browns fan page accounts on Instagram. I'm sorry, I don't remember the names, but it was some guy on Twitter. But you look at it, and you look at the Deshaun Watson trade, 3 first-round picks, single-handedly destroyed Miles' window in Cleveland and Nick Chubb's window in Cleveland, just by the nature of him being there. Like, he's been here for a couple years, and that's the time that Nick Chubb has, come in, and not come in since Deshaun has been here, but we've seen him fall. We've seen the decline of Nick Chubb, and now he's nowhere near the type of back that he was, and now Deshaun single-handedly put this team in ruin again, with no playoff success, no success just in general, and the lack of playing just in general. So that kind of push Miles towards the edge is kind of what you look at it into that perspective. So Deshaun Watson is the I don't know, man. Maybe he's come here to haunt Cleveland again. But with that whole thing too, I saw a thing that was that kind of came out with like there was like a TikTok video or something like that with Deshaun, where he had his he was supposed to be quote unquote like in his boot, like his little walking boot, because obviously he has the whole Achilles tear in that foot, and he didn't have it in that video, and he was doing some TikTok dances with one of his lady friends. So there's a lot of like contract, kind of statements and things in his contract that kind of are
Can't do
saying
that.
you can't take off your boot for any reason. You know what I mean? Because that's a
What's
medical. That's a medical.
It's similar too. It's similar with what you're saying too. It's like hockey because it's like you can't like. It's like a guy got hurt. It was like this famous hockey player got hurt on a 4-wheeler, and he had to figure out how to change it because in the contract in your contract there's a clause that says you can't do any extreme sports. So
Exactly.
keep going.
And so if he does, in fact, break the clause, like you were saying, that's saying you can't, don't take off the boot, Deshaun. You know what I mean? So they can void his contract, and then I want to say that that money that's going towards his salary can also be voided as well, and you can kind of get out of that contract a whole lot earlier, which is kind of the positive, is what I was mentioning. This is the silver lining. You know what I mean? There's not a whole lot of positives in the whole situation, but if Cleveland can get out of that disgusting, disgusting contract, I think that would be a positive amongst, it'd be a little like, all right, thanks for giving me this. You know what I mean? Just a little bit. So I think, you don't wish for anyone's, to not do what they say in their contract. You know what I mean? Um, for a contract to be voided, for him not to be paid. But in this case, he's done nothing for Cleveland. And I think if that contract is voided, then Cleveland can actually go out and maybe buy some guys, maybe go into free agency, rebuild their team a little bit more, and not have such a handicap on them because they don't really have a whole roster to play with right now. So that's the positive about the whole situation. Hopefully it comes to that fact that we can hopefully avoid that contract and move on with the Deshaun Watson era, see what we got going in the draft here and then drafts to come with future quarterbacks and stuff like that. So we'll see what direction they end up moving in. I don't know, but would love to see Deshaun out of Cleveland and probably I don't know at what role he would be in the future. Maybe like a third string is kind of my guess. Maybe a practice squad guy because you just don't. I don't think he's that good.
Yeah, but think about second string quarterbacks in this league.
Cooper Rush, he's better than Deshaun Watson by like a mile.
Yeah, but I mean, like, go to the Giants now.
Tommy DeVito, baby. Come on.
Come on.
Who's well, Drew Lock. I thought he played well. At least he's probably thrown more touchdowns than Deshaun Watson, being a backup. I'll tell you that.
Well, since he's been hurt, I mean, here's the thing, right? It's like, first of all, there's a lot to unpack there, right? Like, there's a whole lot to unpack with the whole Deshaun Watson thing. It's like, if you do anything within the contract and you can't get paid, that's stuff that we don't understand and is taken out on like the NFL legal side. And I don't understand, if that I don't have TikTok. I have no clue. I'm hardly on the whole social media these days. It feels like, unless I'm sending you reels or you're sending me reels, right? Like that's it. My thing with this is that, yeah, if you get the contract voided, of course you can rebuild a whole lot faster. Absolutely. But like, it's still going to bite you. You know what I mean? And also, like, here's the thing we got to talk about. Like, it's Cleveland. Like, I don't know. Hey, let's come to Cleveland, right? Like that's you got to get the guy, right? You have to get the guy when other people want to get the guy. Kirk Cousins. How hard is it going to be to get Kirk Cousins when there's like, other teams out there that want him? Who knows? But for me, I don't understand in today's age why you would do anything, let alone have a camera on you and dancing when you're supposed to be, resting that Achilles or having that boot. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that happened in the offseason with Dak Prescott. When Dak Prescott was supposed to have his boot on and he was off he was feeling good. And he was walking around with some flip-flops, I think was what it was. And he was just having a good old time in Cabo. And when you're not an NFL superstar, you can do that. But when you are, you kind of can't. Now, what happened this year? Dak started the season and played, then got injured. But, that's one of those we're going to see what happens. And that's one that we will continue to look at it and update as. Because if they somehow get out of that contract, absolute fleece job by Cleveland.
Yeah, somehow. I mean, we obviously know Deshaun Watson is no stranger to breaking the rules, so this doesn't really come as a surprise, I would say.
Now, last NFL thing, Dallas did name a new offensive coordinator, and I just want to say it is Clayton Adams. He is the offensive line coach for the Cardinals. I know Brian Schottenheimer is going to be the one calling the plays, but didn't even bring in another OC. Just brought in an offensive line coach. Just wanted to say, Dallas, great job again. You're doing just great things. Hey, looking forward to number 3.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. You know what I mean? It's not the worst thing in the world.
He's not going to be calling plays. It's going to be Schottenheimer. It's like it's kind of one of those things. He's like, hey, help the offensive line. I'm going to be doing this. So it's not a bad one. It's just it's funny how the media kind of portrayed it as like, why would you do this? It's like, he's going to be focused on those guys. Schottenheimer's going to be calling plays.
It's very clear that Dallas needs some offensive line help just in general. They need to get back to the way that they used to be. And I think Tyler Smith is a great cornerstone, even though he's not at the corner of the line, but he's kind of, you know what I mean? He's a franchise guy, not a corner, just a stone. But hopefully we can get,
some stones.
He does. He's pretty nice. Pro Bowl guy. That's pretty sick. But hopefully get Tyler Guyton going. Hopefully get a Cooper Beebe going. I think Zach is going to be just fine again. If he's playing, you know what I mean? I'm not really sure how that whole injury thing's going. And then Terrence Steele on the other side. Hopefully we can get those guys back up to a level that we've seen them all. But that was probably the worst I've seen them ever all individually ever play too. Except Tyler Smith, that is playing well. But I like Zach. Zach's fine. But down year for him, which is it's not saying a lot. But
more holdings than more Pro Bowls than holdings.
It's impressive, very nice. But you look at the Cardinals. I thought the Cardinals were fantastic. Running the ball this year. James Conner was awesome. It's just a resurgence in his career. You look at that and you look how they played, and it's like,
not to mention Kyler. That's a hard quarterback to protect.
Exactly. He's moving around. These guys are protecting for a long time. So I think that's a good move. Maybe my favorite of the offseason so far. It's hard to say that there's a favorite, you know what I mean? Given that
it's not really a good one.
There's not really a good one, you know what I mean? So by, de facto favorite, which is cool. But I like it. I think that Jerry's, being like, hey, we got to fix some of this stuff. Like it's very clear that they have issues and he's trying to fix them, which is a step in the right direction, which I do like. He's obviously going about it his own way, but this one kind of has a little bit of backing. This guy's got a resume. What? We hire people with resumes now? That's crazy.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, they used to, not anymore. All right, jump into some basketball. Tana's Corn 3 segment. Really, we're talking NBA trades.
The madness.
Hey,
the madness.
Hey, I'm a Lakers guy. You know what I mean? I'm a Lakers guy. I've been a Lakers guy since a child.
Start us off.
Dude, Luka Doncic to the Lakers. First of all, if you would have told me that Luka would have been traded this season, I would have been like, absolutely not. Sorry, let me rephrase that. This offseason, I would have said absolutely not. Then you would have told me in season, I would have said, there's no way. And it happened. I would argue the biggest NBA trade in history ever in the middle of the season. Obviously, I'm probably missing some, but just what do you even? So much to unpack here. So much to unpack. First of all, what the heck is going on? What do you think? What do you think about this trade?
Oh, there's a lot. Okay, just grading the trade. Obviously, I think the Lakers got about the highest grade you could possibly get on a trade ever, because they somehow got Luka for like a first-round pick, and obviously sending a player. Anthony Davis was sent over, but realistically, it was like a first-round pick. You know what I mean? Because you're getting an all-star in return in Luka, so you only had to give up all right, 2025.
Didn't Rudy Gobert go for 4 first-round picks or something like that?
3 or 4. It was something like that. Yeah. It's something stupid.
1 for Luka? 1?
De'Aaron Fox went for 2, technically, if you look at it like that. So it's kind of crazy. I don't really know. This is going to be a move that we're going to have to look down the line in 5 to 10 years and evaluate, because I don't think we can correctly evaluate it right now. Luka is right now he's a superstar. Right now, Luka is the greatest thing that's ever touched the Mavericks since Dirk. You know what I mean? And there's no rhyme or reason why they did it. Now you look a little bit deeper into the cracks. You look into like kind of why the things that they're talking about, like his health, his fitness, quote unquote, his ability to stay fit.
Yeah, and the biggest thing that I saw is I was reading a story, and it was essentially that he had an upper body injury, and he came back from the upper body injury, and he was apparently, I'm not a basketball guy, but apparently he was overweight, and right after he came back from his upper body injury, he injured his knee, apparently to being overweight. Now, I don't know how true that is. I don't know if that's just a narrative being like spun, but regardless, Shaq said it today. Fat Luke is better than 99% of the guards in the NBA. And like I completely agree with him. And if like we're gonna deem Luka as like fat Luka, like Luka's never been a small guy. Luka's never been a guy that's been like a six-pack ripped. You know what I mean? He's always been kind of like a bigger guy. He's like 6'7", 6'8". You know what I mean? But keep going with what you're saying.
It's baffling because you have guys in the NBA, Jokic as the prime example, the king of kings in the NBA right now.
Great call.
Look at his body type. Go look at him with his shirt off and tell me that Luka is worse than that. Obviously, different positions. You know what I mean? They're playing different positions, but as I've said on this podcast, the NBA is a lot more fluid in the way that it likes to name positions nowadays. Luka plays a lot of places on the court. Why? Because he can. You know what I mean? Because he has such a unique body type, because he's able to shoot the ball at such a high frequency from the point, from the 1 and the 2. Like he can play in those positions, and if you want him to, he can post up down low. You know what I mean? Like he can go and do that. Is this his best strength? No, obviously not. But it gives him, a lot of variance in his game and stuff like that. So it's a little baffling. You got guys like Zion, you know what I mean? Same thing, like a lot of bigger body. And you got guys on the opposite side of the spectrum too, like Wemby. He's not big. He's not strong. Oh, he's big, but he's not like, he's skinny. He's lanky. That's not, he was, said he wasn't big. He wasn't going to be strong enough to compete in the NBA. You know what I mean? And he's proving the doubters wrong by his style of play.
Player of all time.
He's already making insane stats. He's probably going to be defensive player of the year in his second season, So you look at the whole Luka thing and you look at him when he walked off the plane in LA, and I was like, that guy didn't look out of shape. That guy doesn't look overweight. He actually looked pretty good.
Yeah. And then on the bench too. And like the press conference and everything too. Like here, like, if you're overweight, like it shows in like your cheeks and like this area, right? Like that's where it shows pretty quickly.
Eddie Lacy was overweight.
Eddie Lacy.
You look at Eddie Lacy. Alabama. Eddie Lacy was overweight. Sorry, Eddie. But you look at him and you could see a clear difference between the beginning and the end of his career. Now you look at Luka, sure, he's grown, but he's like 25.
He's 25.
Who cares?
25 years old.
Who cares? Like he's a year older than I am. Look at me. I like crap. And I'm just fine. Obviously, it's going to catch up to me. But Luka is an NBA player. You know what I mean? Like he has chefs and cooks and strategies and things like people looking out for him, being like, "You should do that. Could do this." Like,
and think about I don't know. And think about what's going to happen when he goes to Los Angeles. In terms of basketball, like it's LA, right? Like that's and here's the other part about it, right? He's going with a guy that invests like millions in his body. You don't think that that's going to get him right? You don't think that he's going to go into LeBron's kind of inner circle and LeBron's going to get that right, get that tight? You know what I mean? Like my thing is with Luka is this is a guy that realistically gave you a very good shot at the end of LeBron James's career. Yeah. Gave you a better shot than I think anybody could have given you in the league aside from Jokic or maybe Anthony Edwards. Like literally, those are the only two guys that I would have potentially maybe taken over Luka. And even then, I understand I'm crazy for not taking Jokic, but like Luka's 25.
He's 25.
Anthony Edwards is younger than him. And so like you now have a guy that is going to be a cornerstone. Now, I want to hit on this part because this is the only thing that could be bad about this trade on the Lakers side. Okay. So with Dallas trading Luka, that means that Luka is now not eligible for a supermax contract, which means he lost about over $115 million just by being traded. which is kind of crazy to think about. The reason I say that, the Lakers can only pay him as much as every other team in terms of the CBA. So is he going? Essentially, what I'm saying is he is going to get paid the exact same amount in LA than if he were to go to Charlotte and get paid there, right? So that's the only thing that's working against the Lakers. There's a potential that if there was a massive fire this season and Luka comes in and it just goes downhill, that he could walk. And then you lose Anthony Davis and you lose a first round pick for absolutely nothing. Now, do I think that's going to happen? No. Not even the conspiracy theorist part of me thinks that's going to happen. He is in
Luka's
LA.
Loyal. He's loyal.
And not to mention the fact, again, you are in LA. It's not like, I mean, he wasn't born in the United States. He knew Kobe, right? Like it's not like this is his first time being introduced to LA, right? Like he's known Kobe. He's like, in the interview, he says he wished Kobe was still around to see this, right? For Luka to be there in LA. So for me, I mean, Kobe, and that's the guy that got me into it when I was a kid. That's the guy that brought me into being a Lakers fan. Shaq, that's the guy. Like, so for me, it's like, it's so cool to see a trade like this happen in regular season, especially when it's my squad. Now, we got one more trade to talk about. Probably should have started with that one now that I think about it. But De'Aaron Fox goes to your team, the San Antonio Spurs. And look, I don't know if De'Aaron Fox is the fastest guy in the NBA, but I think he's probably pretty damn close. And now you have Wemby. So take this away. What do you think this is going to turn into in the Spurs?
It's going to be something fun. And two, I want to say about that Luka, one last thing, that trade is, Anthony Davis is not a bad player, like by any stretch of the means. I think
he's top 10.
I think that, he dropped he had like a 40-20 game, like last week or something like that for the Lakers.
He's the reason they won the championship.
Like he's awesome, man. Like AD has been fantastic on the Lakers. So I think he's going to be just fine on the Mavericks. I think they got a lot of big guys. A lot of big dudes, which is going to be fun, I guess. But they're going to have to rebuild. And Kyrie and get some guards that aren't from when I was a child, also in the NBA. Let's get some new youth in there. But him and Derek Lively, I think they're going to be doing just fine. It gives them a great chance to win regardless, and they get some stuff out of it too. But anyways, De'Aaron Fox, San Antonio. I don't know if I called it on this podcast, but I've talked.
You said it 2 weeks ago. You said it 2 weeks ago. You did.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it happened, and I was talking to Dad. I had went over and I borrowed his truck. I was moving some stuff, and I went at the house and I talked to him. This was the day the Luka the trade happened. I think the day after actually. And I was talking to you, or I was talking to Dad, and I was like, man, I just want the Spurs to go out and get someone with this trade. Like looking at all the trade, I want the Spurs to go out and get someone. I told him, I was like, I want that kid from Sacramento. I want them to go out there and get Fox, because I've been hearing him with the trade rumors. They don't want to pay him and stuff like that.
You have.
And lo and behold, they did it. It was either I wanted him or Jimmy Butler, and I think this is the better trade by far. If you're San Antonio, you get De'Aaron Fox, who's super young, and you're going to pair him.
How do you defend that? How do you defend him and Wemby? How do you defend the fast break against him and Wemby? How do you defend that?
Here, you from watching the Spurs all year long, you're starting to see these guys kind of get comfortable playing with Wemby. Steph Castle, he's only had him for half a season so far. But these other guys like Keldon Johnson, CP3's had him for half a year. Devin Vassell has played with him. Trey Jones is unfortunately now gone. But you got these guys on San Antonio. Jeremy Sohan, another guy that has been playing with Wemby. So you got these guys. You have, for some reason, like a year or two ago, San Antonio didn't have like any guards. You know what I mean? But then they went out and Vassell developed him. Keldon Johnson's starting to hit his stride now. You know what I mean? All these guys that I'm talking about. Jeremy Sohan, his time at guard is long gone. But so we can put that under the rug now. So now they have De'Aaron Fox. They have him number one. And he's learning with CP3 again. You know what I mean? So him and C3P are now reunited again, and he's going to give you absolute speed. So he can learn, or Steph Castle can learn from De'Aaron Fox and Chris Paul. And he already is averaging like 15 points a game, by the way, Steph Castle. And he's going to be playing in the dunk contest too. So the more chemistry that whole team gets together, the better and better they're going to be. They surprisingly have a lot of depth now. at the guard position, which is something you did not say a year ago or even 2 ago. I mean, they drafted 2 guards in the first round. If you remember, they trade one, which was Dillingham, and he's been playing okay. I think in Minnesota. So that's what they traded him over to. But man, I love it. Spurs basically got De'Aaron Fox for I think this year's 2025 Chicago Bulls pick, which is that is a little bit of a pricey pick, I will admit. And then I think they threw a 2027 Spurs pick in there as well. So obviously it was a 3-team trade, so there was some other salary gymnastics going on. I think Zach LaVine made his way over to the Kings as well, and we could see the Kings destroy their whole roster is kind of what I'm looking at. If De'Aaron Fox is on the move, that's kind of their guy. He dropped like 60 or whatever earlier this year. I mean, he's fantastic. But they still got a lot of superstars: DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, and Domantas Sabonis looking pretty good. But I could see like Sabonis going out. I could see honestly Malik Monk. I've heard his name in trade Cox in the offseason. I could see him going. It looks like the Kings are starting to be sellers with their poor performance on the year. So they had a nasty roster, in my opinion, on opening night, and it doesn't look like they're playing as well as expected. So, man, it's gonna be fun in San Antonio. Once Pop comes back, I'm gonna be so curious to see how they run things with Wemby, with De'Aaron Fox. I'm curious to see how much of a role he does play. Like obviously he's starting, but who's starting next to him? Is it gonna be Vassell? Is he gonna be the shooting guard? Like, is it gonna be CP3 at the 2? Is it gonna be Steph Castle at the 2? You know what I mean? Like, Castle's been playing well. He's been starting recently. I don't think he's going to anymore. I would put Vassell in there. Obviously Harrison Barnes, Wemby. And then at that point, it's kind of you can pick your poison after that. Maybe Sohan. So I like it. I can't say enough good things about this trade. Spurs needed a guy because you look at that whole situation with Wemby there, and you can see that he's clearly the best player on that team. He's clearly the most athletic. He's clearly, when he's on, he's one of the best young players in the NBA. And now they just went and they got former, all-star guy to pair with him who knows how to play with bigs, who's played with Domantas Sabonis for a long, long time. So he knows how to play around these guys, and CP3 is going to get him right. I have full faith that this situation is brewing perfectly in San Antonio for them. So we'll see what they can do towards the end of the year. I don't really expect them to kind of go on a run. Maybe they make the play-in, which would be great, but there are a couple games, if like 4 or 5 games under 500, which is going to be tough. The Kings are probably going to fall, I will admit, since they did make those trades, but they got a couple other guys that they could see, though that they would need to fall in order for them to make that play-in. But it's halfway through the year. We got like 42 games left after the All-Star break, and we're going to ride, because that's just what's going to happen. So what do you got? Like, what do you think about this trade? I mean, obviously not the biggest NBA guy, but Wemby is such a phenom, and De'Aaron Fox is such a, household name, at least in Sacramento when he was lighting the beam. So, he's been fantastic in the playoffs. And what do you think? What are your thoughts?
I actually watched De'Aaron Fox in college.
Kentucky, right?
Yeah, I watched him play in Kentucky. Not at Kentucky. God, I wish I went to Rep. But no, I watched him play at A&M. I also watched Jamal Murray play. I got to watch some really good guards play now that I think about it.
Was he at that game that I was at?
Yeah.
That was that one. Okay, well, I can say that I've also seen De'Aaron Fox play.
Yeah, you have. You have seen him as well. Then yes, that was the one where they took it at the end. I think that you have arguably the fastest guy in the NBA with a big that you've never seen a big like this in the NBA that can stretch the floor more than anybody, and I mean like literally, because he's so big and it just takes him like 5 steps to get down the entire court, and when he's sitting at the free throw line, he can like little kid put it in the little tyke hoop. You know what I mean? Like that's what he does, right? So like with De'Aaron Fox's game, it's going to be interesting how it translates, because it's like when you have CP3, it's a lot slower, right? You're developing the plays, you're running plays, you're setting plays up. De'Aaron Fox is fast. Like he's very, very fast. And I'm not saying that he can't set up plays. He absolutely can, right? He ran shit in Sacramento, but it is a trade for me that's so interesting because the possibilities that could come with it. This could turn the Spurs into, because they're already a lethal defensive team just because of Wemby.
Mm-hmm.
This could turn them into like the offensive side of the ball where it's like, wait a second, these guys are kind of hitting good, because like you said, Fox has had games where he's hit a lot of points. Now, do I think you need to, is Fox going to get you 30 a night? I don't think so, right? Like, I don't think Fox is going to get you 30 a night, but he's going to get you at least 10 assists. And honestly, probably 15 because Wemby's playing. And not to mention the fact of, again, how fast he is, which means you are now developing the shooting side as well. And, sorry, I didn't hit that three. It's okay. Wemby's going to get the offensive board anyway, right? So it's like you just have a guy like Wemby where you can build and change so many different things. And it's going to be interesting for me to see what happens when Pop comes back, how the game plan kind of changes, and how they run this team through De'Aaron Fox. Because you don't make a trade like that. And he has to start at the point, or he goes to shooting guard and CP3 continues to start at the point, because it's like, you can't put CP3 as a shooting guard because CP3 is not a shooter. CP3 runs stuff, but you want to put the ball in De'Aaron Fox's hands at the beginning of when you pass the ball in from out of bounds, because it's like he can beat you off the rush, and all of a sudden you then have an odd man rush on the going the opposite way because the point guard's back over there because De'Aaron Fox outran him, right? So it's like there's so many different possibilities that could happen.
It's interesting too, because you look at kind of the way that Cavs play, the Cavaliers, and they have two all-star guards in Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. And the interesting thing that they've kind of done this year is they're never having like a bad team on the floor at one time, because they have two guys that can run point with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, they're both starting, but as the game continues to go on, you continuously see, okay, let's take Darius out, let's keep Donovan in, let's keep Evan Mobley in, let's get Jared Allen out. You know what I mean? So they're segmenting their team so that they can have a good production over the course of the entire game, right? Because they have that depth, because they're able to do that in those situations, right? They don't have to have all five starters out there to get the best possible, like to get a good team on the court. And now with De'Aaron Fox in San Antonio, you have multiple different looks that you can start in at guard. Like at guard, you're not going to have to worry about guard for the next 3 to 4 years in San Antonio, which is awesome because you have guys that you're developing, and then you have guys that are ready to play now, like De'Aaron Fox, CP3. So I would assume De'Aaron Fox starts at the point. I would like to see Devin Vassell at the 2, and then that's the starting lineup. And then come second quarter, whenever you're subbing in your guys, put De'Aaron Fox on the bench. Let CP3 in. You know what I mean? Let him run the point in the second quarter, and then Steph Castle at shooting guard, you know what I mean? Or Keldon Johnson, so like you have so many options. Your guards are always going to be pretty dang good in the Spurs. You're not going to have to go down into the well. I mean, they still have Julian Champagnie, who's one of the, I think he's top 10 in free throws or in 3-point percentage this year, which is awesome. He's a shooting guard you can throw in there too. You know what I mean? And like I said, they're keeping all their guys. The only guy that got rid of at guard was Trey Jones, who is like kind of a project for them, but you kept everyone else. Like they basically stole this guy out of Sacramento for a couple picks. You know what I mean? That I would take this trade 10 times out of 10. But they just have so many they have so much offensive kind of like variabilities now, variations now. They can put multiple teams on the court. It's kind of like in hockey where you have a first, second, and third line. You know what I mean? So you can kind of bring your guys out one after another. So kind of like not a lack of offensive production. Obviously when Wemby's not on the court, it's a clear difference. Defensively, you're not as good. But if you can kind of keep some of that offense and keep some of that time on the ball, lack of turnovers, it's going to do wonders for the Spurs. And that's what they're needing. They need offense, obviously. So I love it, and I think it's just I'm going to watch tonight. I think we got tip off in like 30 minutes. So I'm going to see how they decide to play it, because you could play it any way you want. Obviously, they got the interim head coach in. We're going to see what he cooks up for De'Aaron Fox. But, man, it's looking good at San Antonio over here. I'm a fan.
Fun times in San Antonio, and you kind of alluded to it. You talked about hockey, so that's the perfect segue. Mm-hmm. Four Nations Faceoff. All right. So we are literally going to hit the format, the schedule, the rosters, and then predict the actual Four Nations as well. If you haven't heard of it, you're about to. The Four Nations Faceoff, essentially, I'm just on NHL.com. It's a round-robin tournament. Each team will play 3 tournament games. Like I said, round robin, you get 3 points for a win in regulation, 2 points for a win in overtime shootout, 1 point for a loss in overtime shootout, and 0 points for a loss in regulation time. The two best teams with the best tournament record will then advance to a 1-game final. So that is the format of the tournament. Now, most of it's played in Canada, the Bell Center in Montreal. Then it moves to TD Garden in Boston. So it starts next week. You got Wednesday, February 12th. You got Canada versus Sweden. You've got United States versus Finland on Thursday, the 13th. And then Saturday, this is the big one, hockey fans. Finland versus Sweden. And then you have the United States versus Canada at night. Okay, let's get ready to go, everybody. We haven't had international hockey in years. Last time I saw international hockey, TJ Oshie scored like 7 shootout goals to win it, because in international play, you can just send the same guy over and over, and he kept doing it. Then on Monday, February 17th, you've got Canada versus Finland. This is when it changed to Boston Garden. You have Sweden and the United States to finish it out on Monday. Thursday, February 20th, you have the championship game. So that is the format. That is the schedule. Obviously, there's 4 teams. You've got Finland, you've got Sweden, you've got US, and you've got Canada. Okay. I'm going to go into Finland and Sweden. We're going to go into Finland first. Then we're going to go into Sweden. Then we'll go into Canada. Then we'll go into the United States. If I remember that order, I could go out of the order. Who knows? It's our show. Finland. Okay. This is a squad that has some guys. All right. The best guy that got on their team is Sebastian Aho. Sebastian Aho on the forward side of the ball, on the forward side of the puck. Then you've got Yoel Armia from the Montreal Canadiens. You've got Barkov from the Florida Panthers. You got to see him. That is a veteran leader in there with Barkov. I think he might be their captain. I'd be pretty shocked if he wasn't. Then you have a Dallas Star. You have Mikael Granlund. You have Eric Holla from the Devils. You have another Dallas Star, Rupe Hintz. Mm-hmm. Then you have Capo Caco for the Seattle Kraken. You have Patrick Laine for the Montreal Canadiens. You have Arturi Lehkonen for the Colorado Avalanche. Anton Liddell for the Florida Panthers. Oh man, I don't even know. I don't even know. Another forward for the Florida Panthers, Lusterian. Mikko Rantanen because he now is on the Carolina Hurricanes. I forgot he got traded. And then Teuvo Teravainen for the Chicago Blackhawks. Good Lord, Finland. I'm reading that roster like there's no way. That is an insane roster, dude. This is going to be a lot closer than people think. That's some solid forwards, by the way. That's 4 lines of solid forwards. Defensemen. This is where you could kind of argue that maybe the defensemen aren't there. You have Henry Jokinen for the Buffalo Sabres. You got Esa Lindell for the Stars. You've got Oli Mata for the Utah Hockey Club. Nico Mokula for the Florida Panthers. Goodness. Rasmus Rostelinen for the Philadelphia Flyers. Dude, get ready for hockey.
You chose to do this.
I know I chose to do this.
You started with this country.
That's why. I'm going Sweden next, and then it gets easier. Euro Vakaninen for the New York Rangers. I'm not sure if he's actually on the team because there's a little plus by his name. I'm not sure what that means. Juuso Valamäki for the Utah Hockey Club. Then goalies, you got Kevin Lankinen, Jukka-Pekka Lehkonen. Jeez. Then UC Saros. So
nice.
The Finnish goalies and the Finnish forwards are disgusting. Sebastian Aho, Alexander Barkov, Rupe Hintz, Capo Caco's, not necessarily hasn't really held up to expectations where he got drafted. Patrick Laine has kind of fallen off a cliff. He got benched recently, but when he came back in the lineup on Montreal, he kicked ass and took names. Mikko Rantanen, a guy that's just down there chilling for the Carolina Hurricanes that changed the entire game in terms of trades, right, on the hockey side. And like I said, you've got arguably one of the best goaltenders in the league with Lankinen for the Vancouver Canucks right now. And UC Saros for the Nashville Predators was a guy that was like the best goalie in the league a couple years ago. So Finland, I don't think that this is a stretch that Finland is gonna take this thing to the end. I might even argue that Finland potentially has a better team than Sweden. But Sweden, we've got Victor Arvidsson this is forwards for the Edmonton Oilers. You got Jesper Bratt, the New Jersey Devils, Leo Carlson for the Anaheim Ducks. Good Lord, that's a good first line. And that's not even the first line. That's okay. It's in alphabetical order. You have Eriksson Ek, you have Philippe Forsberg, Adrian Kempe, Elias Lindholm, William Nylander, that's their best player. Gustav Nyquist, Elias Pettersson, Lucas Raymond for the Detroit Red Wings. Good Lord. Raquel for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and Zibanejad for the New York Rangers is the last guy that's rounding out that forward. Defenseman, you have Rasmus Andersson, Jonas Brodin, Rasmus Dahlin. Good Lord. Matthias Ekholm, Gustav Forsling, Victor Hedman, and Erik Karlsson. Good Lord, Sweden. And then your goalies, you have Arison, you have Philippe Gustafsson, and then you have Linus Ullmark for the Ottawa Senators, who's also been playing one of the best this year. So almost lost it there. Almost lost it there. That is a stupid good team as well. Now you have Canada, but Canada, you have one open spot because Alex Pietrangelo, that's a tough name to say. I can't even really get it. Pietrangelo left. He's not playing, right? So they're thinking that Drew Doughty just came back from injury. They're thinking he may get into it. These are the forwards for Canada. Get ready. Sam Bennett, Anthony Cirelli, Sidney Crosby, Brandon Hagel, Seth Jarvis, Travis Konchetoff, Nathan McKinnon, Brad Marchand, Mitch Marner, Connor McDavid, Braden Point, Sam Reinhart, and Mark Stone.
Oh my
That's the forwards.
I know a lot of those guys. that means they're really good.
Now the defensemen, you've got Kale Salad McCarr.
Oh,
you've got Josh Morrissey for the Winnipeg Jets. You've got Parayko for the Blues. You've got Travis Sanheim for the Flyers. You've got Shea Theodore for the Golden Knights, and you've got Devon Taves for the Colorado Avalanche. And like I said, most likely Drew Doughty's going to be in there too. For the goalies, you have Jordan Bennington, Stanley Cup champion, Aiden Hill, Stanley Cup champion, and then you've got Stan Montembeault for the Montreal Canadiens. Stupid squad, but it's the Canadians. They're always going to be loaded. They kind of like made the sport, right? Now, here's the Americans. Here's the Americans right here. You know, I may have played roller hockey at the Junior Olympics, but this is the best chance we've had. And here's the thing about the Four Nations. This is a tune-up. This is just a tune-up. We got the Olympics in a little bit, and that's when it's going to get real fun. And we'll see if Russia's going to be able to play in that. Forwards. We got Matt Boldy for the Minnesota Wild, Kyle Connor for the Winnipeg Jets, Jack Eichel from Vegas, Jake Kuncel for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I didn't even know he was on here. Oh, yeah, that guy, what's his name? Really going for New Jersey? Jack Hughes. He's on here too. Chris Kreider, Dylan Larkin, Austin Matthews, JT Miller, Brock Nelson, Matthew Tkachuk, Brady Tkachuk, and Vincent Trocheck.
That's fun.
So the Americans are coming with some pepper. This one, defensemen's, I would argue the best defense in the entire tournament. Brock Faber for the Minnesota Wild, Adam Fox, arguably the best defenseman in the league. Noah Hannafin from Vegas, Quinn Hughes, the other best defenseman in the league. Charlie McAvoy, Jacob Slavin, and Zach Werenski. Just unbelievable defense for the States. Connor Hellenbach for the goalie, Jake Ottinger, and Jeremy Swayman as your goaltenders. Yeah. Swayman. That guy. We got Swayman coming in. So, I don't know who's going to win this tournament, but I'm going to say that it's going to be the Canadians and the U.S. in the end. But if Sweden or Finland somehow pokes their way in there, I'm not going to be shocked at all. Canada is coming off of a loss at the World Juniors. So they need a win here. U.S. beat them. U.S. took them to the cleaners. Canada didn't even make it to the championship in the World Juniors. Honestly, a pitiful showing. But do the United States do it again? Did the United States do it in best on best? In international play, do they do it again? We'll see. Obviously, I'm stoked about it. Played hockey my entire life. Didn't start playing ice hockey till I was 14. You know, this is going to be a tournament where a lot of us don't really know going into it. A lot of us don't know because it's an NHL sanctioned event. It's run by the league, but it's the Four Nations Faceoff, right? Like we had the World Cup of Hockey a bit ago, and that was a very good showing by the Canadians. But I think these guys are going to go at it, and I think it's going to be an absolute hell of a showing and some great hockey at the international stage. So this is going to be a fun game. And if you're a hockey fan, please tune in. Tanner, I know I just went for a whole 15 minutes by myself there, but I couldn't stop. I was so excited.
It was quite impressive. Some of those names in there, I was just like, all right, solid. I mean, I don't know why you started with the two hardest countries first, but maybe, setting up for a grand finish with the Canadians and the States. So
Cheers.
I think it's just really cool. This is not a thing that other sports do because they don't have the type of international, maybe the NBA does, but like the type of international representation that the NHL does. I mean, you got guys from literally all over the world coming to play in this one league because it's the best league. And he's like, hey, well, we have the best players in the world. Why don't we let them play for their countries? I'm sure they're going to say yes. You know what I mean? Because you have an opportunity to play for your country in order to represent your flag, the place you were born. I think most athletes are going to kind of jump on that opportunity and give it their all because just the opportunity to kind of wear the flag on your jersey is just so unique and very awesome. So I think it's going to be a hell of a show, and I think these guys are going to, kind of play like it. And let's be honest, this is way cooler than like an all-star game, in the middle of the season. Like the NBA's got their cool dunk contest and like the contest and stuff like that. But like no one watches the Pro Bowl. Probably no one watches the NBA All-Star game unless there's something like I might watch the dunk competition, you know what I mean? But like no one's watching this skill showdown. Yeah, when like there were cool guys who were dunking in it. Now we got no names. Exactly. So like this is way cooler. It gives fans a chance to actually like engage in like competition, be able to like root for something that actually matters because, you're a citizen of a country. What I'm kind of curious too is like why, obviously these are just very big hockey nations, but like why only 4? You know what I mean? Like obviously there's other nations that represent hockey, players and stuff like that. So I'd be curious to see if they would kind of expand that format in the future. Obviously there's not a whole lot of like time period you kind of have to fit this whole tournament into, but like you're saying, a round robin with 4 teams, each team's only going to play 3 matches and then you're headed to the final. So you're playing a max of 4 matches.
It feels like you're going up to Dallas, like how I used to play every weekend. Like it's a round robin. That's exactly every tournament that I ever played in travel hockey was literally just round robin, and that's all it was. We made it to the championship every time and got just destroyed by some team from Dallas. But the thing about this that I like about this tournament is it's a tune-up for the Olympics. I mean, the Olympics are happening in not that long. We just had the Summer Olympics, so that means Winter Olympics is 2 years from when those are over, right? So the Winter Olympics is happening, and this is a big part of that, right? This is a lot. You're going to see a lot of guys. A lot of these guys are veterans. A lot of these guys are young. If they don't show up, I think that the roster is going to change a lot from right now to the Olympics. And there's a lot of guys that were snubbed that you're just like, how did they not make this team, right? Like, how did they not make it? But you alluded to it earlier about putting in more countries and everything. Yeah, you could. If you had Russia, you could, right? Like you could, but Russia's obviously can't do international sports right now. In terms of other nations, I know there are, but I think that this is kind of more of like these are the nations that have the most guys in the NHL and like the most guys that I wouldn't say superstars, but each one of these teams has a guy that's pretty much a superstar. So for me, it's like that's kind of why. And like Finland and Sweden, like they're not big countries, which is the crazy thing. Like the fact that they have all these guys is crazy. And like I grew up watching Finnish hockey with Teemu Solani, and like that was kind of a new breed there, right? In terms of a guy from Finland coming over and just being that dominant. And then you've got guys in Sweden like Willie Nylander and all these guys coming over now that are just unbelievably dominant, right? Like Victor Hedman. It's like, what are you talking about, right? Like just massive guys. Hell of a tournament. I can't wait for its international play. I'm going to tune into literally every single game. And when U.S. and Canada goes against it, it's going to be fun, as it always is, because I used to watch it with a bunch of Canadians. Shout out to the Rose.
Because it's such like a grudge match. It's such like the match. It's like in hockey, it's like, okay, we're going to go watch the U.S. and Canada beat the shit out of each other. You know what I mean? Like, and that's just going to, the games don't quote unquote mean anything. But nobody cares. We're going to still show up and we're going to represent our country. And I think that's what's really cool about it.
It matters more, to quote Herb Brooks in some sort of way. It matters more for the logo on front than the name on the back, right? It matters a whole hell of a lot more what's on the front of the jersey than what's on the back of the jersey. When you get to put that jersey on, is a United States jersey, a Team Canada jersey, Team Finland, Team Sweden. First of all, the unis are sick that they have. And second of all, it's your name on the back of a freaking international jersey. And a lot of these guys, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, They haven't played international hockey. This is the first time. And it's a tune-up for when we get to play the Olympics, because the thing about the Olympics is you got to remember, I studied that in school, they always didn't have best on best.
Mm-hmm.
When the United States won in New York and Lake Placid, that was college guys going up against like practically the Russian like five is what they called them. And the United States ended up winning, and then the Russians came over to Detroit, and Detroit won a bunch of Stanley Cups because of them. Anything else on the hockey side? Because I know for you're getting into hockey. You're now a seasoned vet. You've been to a professional hockey game, and Dallas Stars are your team, and you've got a lot of stars that are represented in this tournament. Now, unfortunately, you had your best defenseman and one of the best defensemen in the league with Miro Heiskanen get taken out of this tournament.
Watch that game. Actually. That was a tough one. It hit him right in the fall, right just I don't remember who the player was, but just slammed right into his knee. It was just not it was a tough injury, and just like you said, the best defenseman on the Stars, and just such a pivotal guy. But I mean, Jake Ottinger, that's going to be really fun to watch. I think he's been playing really well recently, and he's just been in his bag. So Rupe Hintz, I love Rupe. I think he's going to play well. So a couple guys that you mentioned, like, it's going to be fun. Like, because as a fan, you're a fan of the team, and obviously I'm going to root for Team America. You know what I mean? Team USA. So it's going to be like, whoa, it's like, oh my god, I know that guy, it's so cool. So
little preview for the Olympics.
It's very cool. I'm very excited. You don't see this happen in other sports. People, they don't do this. Like, they take a break for 2 weeks. They don't do this.
Hockey's best.
I love it.
Been saying it forever.
It's awesome.
It's best. Also, one more football thing for the end of this episode, then we can get out of here and Tanner can go watch De'Aaron Fox make his Spurs debut. We got prospect profile time. Luther Burden III. He is definitely not 6'11". I have 6'11" in my notes. He is 6'1", 208 pounds, wide receiver out of Mizzou. Junior, draft grade for me is going to be a late first round. Maybe a little bit of mid to late, but I'm going to go late. Draft projection is going to be mid to late first round. So this is interesting because every year you have a guy that lined up a whole lot in the slot. This is him. Can he line up outside? That's the biggest question for this guy. An absolutely electric player who seems to find holes in the defense all the time. If you watched him play this year, if they played zone, he found the hole in the zone. If they played man, he outrun the man corner, right? So it's just like he was open all the time. Crushed teams that played primarily man coverage. So for me, he's like, if he beats you off the line of scrimmage, I hope that safety's already backpedaling because he's gonna go to the house. True afterburners, and reminds me a lot of Brandon Cooks. That is my kind of pro comparison, is Brandon Cooks with this guy, with his quickness and his run after catch ability. Built like a fridge with legs, and if he catches the ball in the open field, it's a house call, like I said. So Luther Burden III, you've watched this guy play, Tanner. How big of a fan are you of this wide receiver? And do you think that this guy can continue to progress that he's been doing and make plays at the next level?
I like Luther Burden a lot. Obviously you go to a school like Missouri, Mizzou, and it's not the cream of the crop. You're in the SEC, yes, but it's not a place that's going to go and wow a lot of people. You know what I mean? So obviously there's, I think, some some part of football that you got to just be like, okay, yeah, he's playing at Mizzou, but he's doing this type of thing with a whole lot of nothing. You know what I mean? Not saying Mizzou's was bad this year. They had a lot of really good wins, but at times
they were ranked in the beginning.
Exactly, and they were ranked in the beginning. Is kind of what I wanted to allude to. They kind of fell off towards the middle of that season, and you just kind of didn't see him fight back a little bit. I think Burden was playing well, but obviously it's not a one-man show. So given what he had, I think he made pretty much the best out of it. But obviously in times, the only thing that I would say that is kind of like a concern is, there were times when he would disappear, you know what I mean, in some of those bigger games in the year. And obviously he would come back the next game and be just fine. So it's not a really big area of concern, which is why I like him where you have him at the end of the first, kind of a guy that you can kind of wait on a little bit. And maybe if he slides to the second, if you're a team with a high draft pick, you can grab him in the early second or trade up into that late first, and no one's going to be like, oh, that's a bad pick. You know what I mean? With like the guys, like the receiver out of Arizona, we talked about, clearly, in my opinion, the best receiver in this draft class. And I think Luther Burton is kind of maybe not the second, maybe the third behind him. You know what I mean? 2 or 3, depending on who you talk to. So I like him a lot. I kind of knew about him coming into the season. I watched some, so he's pretty much as advertised. You always have these guys that are just super technical, with not a whole lot given to them, kind of on that Missouri team. So I'm curious to see kind of how he develops at an NFL level. I'd love to see him go to kind of a team that is kind of already has a number one receiver, so he can kind of learn and kind of sit behind and be kind of that number 2 option, because like you said, you can play him in a lot of different spots. You don't have to play him at that number 1, at that X receiver. You can kind of put him in the slot, and you can kind of put him wherever, kind of how when CeeDee Lamb came into the league, you could kind of put him wherever, because that's just, he can run pretty much any route. He's going to be fast and savvy at any route. So you can kind of give him a great number 2, and he's going to make a whole lot of plays. Same with Devontae Smith over on the Eagles, number 2 to AJ Brown, obviously very talented, very technical route runner, and can get open in pretty much any scheme. You know what I mean? So you look at Luther Burton, and that's kind of where I kind of pin him. So maybe a number 1 guy in a couple years in the NFL, but absolutely could burst out of the gate and be that guy for a team if he's given that number 1 shot. So I'm curious. I want to see him learn a little bit behind a savvy number 1 wide receiver, just to get his feet in the NFL. But I think he could go to like a team like the New Orleans Saints. They have Chris Olave, but him and like Chris Olave would be nasty, stuff like that. A wide receiver needy team, maybe Buffalo, if they decide to pull the trigger on a receiver again this year. So
end of the first,
kind of those Cincinnati, like that's another one to replace T. Higgins. That would be gross. If you kind of
keep T.
I'm just
gotta keep T.
These guys, they're going,
I know.
There's a lot of really, really good receivers nowadays that come out in the end of the first and, throughout the second and third rounds. So, it's Pickens, not George Pickens, but the Pickens are free. So, and he was a late round receiver as well. Not like super late. I think he was second or third. So, but
there's some Pickens. There. Nice. See what you did there.
Exactly.
Well, there you go. All right, folks. That was if
you can hear. Can you hear that?
A bit.
Can you hear it? I wonder if the viewers can hear it. The ice cream truck's outside, everyone.
Nice. That's a great way to end the episode. Folks,
hold on.
Tanner's gonna go get some ice cream.
Before we turn, I want to see if I can turn off the filter and see if you can hear it, because the noise suppression is on. Hold on, let's see here.
Doing this for the fans, I see.
You can kind of hear it.
Yeah, you can kind of hear it.
You can kind of hear
ice cream truck. Little ice cream truck in the background.
It sounds kind of nice. It's pretty. I didn't know we had those here. I'm gonna be honest, in my neighborhood, we do have children. There are children here, so
that's that. They tend to be in neighborhoods. You know what I mean, folks?
Yeah. No, we got a big.
We'll see you next week.
Goodbye, everyone. Go watch the NBA. It's actually good now. I promise.
Go.